Well, good evening, everyone. This is the commission. As always, I have with me Big Nolski. How are you tonight, Noel?
I'm doing well. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing very well. I'm very calm and relaxed. I have my glass of scotch here, and I'm ready to talk football. How about you?
I've got bourbon, but other than that, exactly the same.
All right, good. Hopefully, won't be as loopy as we have been in the past. The last 2 weeks actually have been quite loopy for both of us, so that will be
Indeed.
should be a little bit more on point. So let's start off with the MVT who dun, 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 is Noel. Yay! Noel got his first win of the season, which sucks, but it's awesome that he won in such a excuse me.
I was gonna
Noel,
say,
I'm
isn't it
sorry.
Charlie? I was like,
It's
what?
Charlie. I did not see. I'm okay. I take back all of that loopy shit I was just saying. It is actually Charlie. I am an idiot. Let's put that down for the record. That is now a permanent part of the MHCL history that I can't read English, apparently. So, Charlie, I'm sorry, Noel. Congratulations. At least you won. I mean, 170 is still a monster score, so at
I,
least you
I,
won.
I'm happy either way. So
Not bad. So, Charlie, congratulations. That was on the back of his MVP, Julio Jones, which is not too uncommon to have the MVT on the same team. Julio slammed down 54 points thanks to a career game by him and setting a franchise record with the Atlanta Falcons, 300 yards on 503 yards thrown by Matt Ryan. So,
and didn't they
really
say he's
monster
one of
game.
6 wide receivers to post a 300-yard game in a single season? Or that? We're both loopy. Yeah, 300-yard game and just ever.
Is it?
I believe they said. I believe it's six. That's rare air, as they would say.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty interesting stat. So yeah, that I mean, if you think about it, 300 yards is what most quarterbacks score, not or put up, not a wide receiver. So that's yeah, I believe it. In fact, I remember Googling at the time who had the best um, scores, like Flipper or something, and he's got 330 something. So I was
LA
hoping that
Rams
they
played
would
for
just
that.
yeah from the 80s. And I was hoping that he would. I was hoping he would pass it just to see a record that hasn't, fallen for many years. But they were so far ahead at that point. They just said, "Ah, screw it. We're just not gonna. We're just gonna run the ball out and end the game," which is what they should do. But at the same time, I just wanted to watch them win. So, Noel, I'm sorry for getting your hopes up, even though you're probably like, "What the hell is Mike talking about?" And congratulations, Charlie.
Go
That
Charlie.
behind us. Yay. I would nominate myself for shithead of the week, but I'm sure you have a better one. What do you got there, Noel?
So, being that it's a short week, and I know it's only one day earlier, we're doing the podcast on a Tuesday as opposed to a Wednesday because I have plans tomorrow, just so everyone knows. It's not so much a singular shithead of the week, more so it's a group of people. And Mike and I have agreed in the past that, and this is not a political post either, but the shithead of the week is not political. However, this one is a plethora of Twitter users who were so upset with Lester Holt after last week's debate that they took to Twitter to take someone with Lester in their name to task. And who they chose to take to task was John Lester, who is a pitcher for the Chicago Cubs. And I sent Mike a link and he'll post it as well. There's just several, and he even took the time to respond to them going, "That's not me. That's not me." But my favorite is from I'm Your Huckleberry is the Twitter handle here. And the whatever this Twitter thing is describes himself as anti-socialist, political atheist, gun owner, hashtag constitutional, hashtag conservative. And also he says he's very aware of those who seek hashtag white genocide. Even after Lester said, "Whoa, buddy, pretty sure you have the wrong Lester," he shot back with, "Nice list of followers. They must be hashtag deplorables." It's just
The
wonderful.
fuck?
No matter your political affiliation, the fact that someone just got mad and went, "I'm gonna type what's Lester? This guy's Lester. It's Lester Holt, right?" And and just went off on a pitcher for the Cubs because they were unhappy with someone named Lester Holt. So
I mean, come on. The dude plays for the Cubs. His life sucks anyways. You don't have to pick on him, too.
he's also, I read tonight because I was looking up his career. He used to play for the Red Sox. He's won some World Series, and I believe he overcame lymphoma. So give the guy a break.
Seriously, that's wow. Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, this is a fantasy football podcast. This isn't anything political, but boy, both sides have their crazies. That's just hilarious. Yeah, I love that the fact they're like, that guy's name was something Lester. This guy's name is something Lester. Fuck this guy. I don't even know. That's all the due diligence I'm doing. Blah. I'm gonna angry rant Twitter. That is how you get things done these days. Yeah, that's hilarious. Like we said last week, I don't know what Noel's going to do for shit out of the week. And even though I nominated myself for the MVT gaff earlier, that is a way better shit out of the week. That's amazing. Congratulations, people of Twitterverse who were picking on the wrong guy named Blank Lester. That's just fucking stupid. Or I guess it's Lester Blank, not Blank Lester. Wow, right. Amazing. Wow. Oh, good one, Noel. That's a really good one. So look for the main page. I will post the stuff that Noel sent me and laugh your ass off. Let's go on to the reviews of week 4. We are a third of the way through the season. And before we actually continue any further, I want to say a heartfelt congratulations to Matt Larson, who had just had his baby daughter not too long ago. So congratulations to him and to his family. I would imagine with a newborn, he's going to do what I did and just draft wide receivers for no fucking reason. So watch the Parker Rams. They might do some crazy things on sleep deprivation. But in all seriousness, congratulations, Matt. I'm very happy and I'm very proud of your family. That's really awesome. And yes, congratulations.
Indeed. Congratulations, Matt.
Let's go to the first game of the week, which was Spartans at Buffaloes. I was re-listening to the podcast from last week, and I unfortunately said that Brandon was going to win this week, and that Vanessa was going to give him a run for his money, and it looks like it was the exact opposite. Vanessa won this week, and Brandon gave her a run for her money. I think Vanessa would have ran away with this one had Trevor Siemian not got taken out early on in the game with a bruised shoulder and put up 8 points. Now, Trevor Siemian hasn't been putting up monster games. He's only been putting up 15, 15, and 43. The Cincy game was huge. But average that out, that's 20 points a game. So he really was only short 12 points. But even still, that would have put Vanny up that much further than Brandon. Both of them had a good week, 141 to 145. Can't argue with that. Anything above 100 feels good. Anything above 120 is good. Anything above 140 is great. And so both of these teams had a great week. Not much improvement that they could have done on either side. So congratulations, Vanessa. You're now 2-2 and tied for first in the Pacific. Brandon is still number 1 in the Mountain Conference at 3-1. And they look to improve as the season goes on. On to my game, which I won. Woo! I was so convinced I was going to lose this week, but a certain pickup helped me out. Take it away, Noel.
He may have done just that, accounting for over a third of your points in Matt Ryan with just an unbelievable performance against, and it should be noted, it's not a bad Carolina defense. It's, sure, 300 of those 503 yards were from one player, but that's still ridiculous. 503 yards, 4 touchdowns against 1 interception. And they pulled him out, relatively early and kind of also just handed the ball off to try and get the game over with. Spencer Ware had a decent game. If they had not gotten down so fast so early, he probably got more points. Allen Robinson had a good game. From what I've seen so far this year, all tight ends are just doing shitty, so I'm not surprised that Jack Doyle did. And to Larson here, this was just, unfortunately for him, a disappointing week, fantasy-wise, not otherwise. As we said, congratulations. You expect more out of Jarvis Landry. Kobe Fleener has just not done shit so far, and then forced to start Theo Riddick and Charles Sims almost ironically, because Larson has suffered so much injuries as far as his running backs go, that he's starting running backs that are replacing injured running backs. And
that he owned. Theo Riddick is the backup for Amir Abdullah, who he owned and is now out for the season.
And then you have Charles Sims, who, despite the fact that everyone's going, oh, with the muscle hamster down, that's got to be a good start for Charles Sims. Maybe, but we're all Broncos fans. We've seen how they shut down running backs, and Charles Sims was not about to change that over. But congratulations on your win, Mike, and congratulations on the addition of the family Larson.
Indeed, this moves both of us to 2-2 and tied for second in the Mountain Conference. So congratulations, Larson. Better luck next week on fantasy, but awesome week, life-changing week this week. Moving on to Ben versus Josh. I was saying that eventually I would expect Josh's team to kind of regress a little bit, and I guess this was the week. Ben, fortunately, I mean, both of them somewhat, but especially Ben coming off of a amazing week, the second highest score in MHCL history, you're going to regress. It's just the way that it works. Ezekiel Elliott had a big game. He's been a great running back this year, putting up 39 points on 138 yards and 1 touchdown. And that was great, but that was about the one of the few shining spots on his team. The other one was Mark Ingram, who put up 27 points. The rest was kind of a crapshoot. Stafford had a mediocre, actually not even mediocre, very subpar game for him. He's been really good. In fact, I believe he was number 3 going into the week, and now he's number 6. He only got 13 points versus other weeks he's got 40, 23, and 37. So that's really good numbers coming out of a quarterback. Problem is, the kicker got 0 points, which, kicker's the worst position on the team, arguably. You're not expecting anything more than a handful of points. But when you put up a goose egg, that sucks. The Chiefs got 7 points. Dennis Pitta got 4. Alshon Jeffrey got 7. Not a fantastic week for Ben. I would expect him to bounce back big time from this. It's just kind of one of those things. Sometimes you score big, sometimes you don't. At least it was big enough to win, which is all you really care about. That was on the back of Drew Brees just falling off a cliff. He got 18 points this week. Not a great game for him. The real disappointing one is DeAndre Hopkins, who I would expect to do very well. And for his $57 draft target acquisition price, high expectations for him. Unfortunately, with the 7-game overpaid wonder that is Brock Osweiler, they just haven't been performing that well. Which, no, you wouldn't expect to be that big of an issue considering the plethora of quarterbacks that have played at Houston that Hopkins has played with and still had amazing years with. I guess I don't know why exactly he's having such a bad season. He's one of those guys that is a special talent. In fact, Courtney and I were talking about this weekend. He's one of those talents that are good. And some players you watch that are special. And I think DeAndre Hopkins is special. What makes him very unique is you throw the ball anywhere near him and he's going to catch it. He has like glue on his gloves. I mean, he just snags it, and it's beautiful. Yes, he's big. Yes, he's fast. But what really makes him, I think, awesome is that he can just catch the ball like none other. And then it's not like big dramatic catches like Odell Beckham Jr., who also has great hands. But he's just really, really, and I'm going to just keep saying special. The problem is, if you don't throw him the ball, he doesn't catch it, it's not going to really, doesn't matter much. He got 1 reception for 4 yards, 1 point. That really sunk Josh. The other thing was Matt Forte had an off week, a big off week. I think the Jets are in trouble here. In the last 2 weeks alone, Fitzmagic has thrown 9 interceptions. You tally on the 2 fumbles he had, that's 11 turnovers in 2 weeks by just one guy. That's going to hurt the whole team because if you don't have the ball, you can't rush it, you can't pass it. So unfortunately, Forte fell off, and it was kind of his fault too. Not the turnovers, obviously, but the 14 attempts, 27 yards. That's less than 2 yards a carry. That's really shitty. That's on him. That's 8 points for Matt Forte. I think that's just sucks. Seahawks had a pretty good game at 18 points. But obviously it's just still not enough. By a 5-point loss here for Josh, 105-110. Good thing for him, though. He's still tied 3-1 in the Atlantic Conference, so he has nothing to worry about with any of that. Like we've said ad nauseum here before, the Atlantic Conference is going to be the battleground. everyone except for Tyler in that division is 3-1. That's Ben, that's Josh, that's Molly. Ben is the highest of the three at 613 points, thanks to that monster game last week, followed by Josh at 590, followed by Molly at 516. Here's the interesting thing. Tyler has 531 points. So he's actually scoring more points than Molly is. The problem is he's actually scoring the fourth most points in the league right now. Excuse me, fifth most points in the league. The problem is he's got 566 points against. That is killing him. So that analysis is meant to say that Tyler has a lot that can go right for him. He just needs the right circumstances. I think that he's going to be a lot better team in the second half of the season. So that's that game. Let's move on to Kenfield versus Molly.
Tough one here for Molly. I mean, I look at her roster, like who she started in this game, and sure, I'm not super surprised Latavius Murray and Giovanni Bernard had down games, but I mean, you expected this game to be closer. It wasn't high scoring by any means. You expected this game to be a lot closer than it was. I mean, as I said, the Panthers defense is good. How did they get torched for that many yards is beyond me. So the 3.5 points, you don't see that coming. Cam Newton, he's been beat up the past couple of weeks. He might be out next week. So I think there's that. And I guess, 10 points for Mike Evans, not good, but not necessarily unexpected against our wonderful Broncos defense. And what I'm noticing as far as Kenfield's team goes, and this I've noticed with several games, is there's just unbalanced scoring that seemed to happen this week where a few players made up for maybe three players made up for the great part of the score. Actually, in Kenfield's case, maybe five. But he managed the bye week well. Threw in Phillip Rivers, who is always an unsung fantasy hero. Duke Johnson, 17 points very quietly. Then there's I would say so far, the disappointment not based on injury of the fantasy year, which is Odell Beckham Jr., who we'll get into this later, is losing his fucking mind. But
yes, he is.
Jimmy Graham, who I, on previous podcasts, have lamented, I've written shit about, saying that he just isn't fitting into the Seahawks offense because they have to force feed him the ball, and he's not blocking. That looks like it's changed. He's blocking on passing plays. He's blocking on running plays. You can see that when Wilson is looking to go to other receivers, he comes back to Jimmy Graham and makes these wonderful catches along the sideline. So that I think that he'll keep going up. He 6 catches, 113 yards, but no touchdowns. He'll get those touchdowns, and I think the receptions go up. Yardage might drop a little bit. Slow week for Doug Baldwin, but I think he'll recover as well. But I didn't listen to the podcast, and I was pretty loopy last week. But my guess is we probably called this game for Molly, so this one's kind of a stunner. But Molly's 3-1 moving forward, and Kenfield, like myself, now has a win. So go Matt.
Yes, go Matt indeed. You both are in the Pacific Conference, and you both are 1-3. I think. Yay! I'm gonna find you, Beer Baron. No, you won't. Yes, I will. No. Yeah. So that 1-3 is not obviously spectacular. I think it's just a low production, honestly, that's hindered you guys so far. But like I said last week, I'm going to make the obvious comment. There's still the majority of the season ahead of us, 8 games. While we're setting up the playoff picture here, it is still far from finished, so we still have a long way to go. So congratulations, Kenfield, on your first win, and let's move on. Game, which is whoops! Oh God, I hit the wrong button. Beep beep. Back it up. That's Noel's game.
Oh, you're missing one.
170. What's that?
On my screen, I have you doing. This is the best stuff. Actually, you can do my game with the next game. Sorry.
Okay. Sometimes we don't practice, and that time is every time. So it's we just kind of have some fun with this whole thing. Noel, congratulations on your first win, and I'm sorry for quasi getting your hopes up, even though I'm sure you're like, what the fuck is Mike talking about?
I was like,
Uh,
what?
um, yeah, I don't know how numbers work. I'll figure those out someday. But yeah, congratulations on your win. You had a great week. Le'Veon Bell is back. You made a great investment with him. You rolled the dice. It's hard to draft a guy that you know is going to be out, especially for $59. 15 carries, 144 yards, 40 points. I'd say it's a pretty damn good investment, especially now that you got him for the rest of the season. Maybe those 3 losses are all you're going to get. Who knows? He is a dominant force. He's one of those guys that can miss 3 games and still be the number 1 running back. He is so essential to the Pittsburgh office and so versatile. They need to use him, and he can rack up a ton of points. The only risk with him, as is true with every player, but it's particularly important with him because of how much they use him, is injury. If he goes down, obviously that's going to suck. That would help whoever owns D'Angelo Williams, which I believe is Josh. So pray that doesn't happen. Russell Wilson came back. Lamar Miller had a great game, 21 points. Travis Benjamin, meh, 9 points. I just don't think San Diego's offense is clicking at all this year. They're really shitty, except for Melvin Gordon, who got 27 points. Now, he's been a real standout this year. He's top 10, actually number 6 through 4 weeks, 23, 34, 21, 27 points. That is great. That is really good. So you've got some quality players here on your offense here. I think that I don't see the beginning of the year looking like the second half of the year for you. I think that your 1-3 start to the year might end up flipping in the next 4 games and you go 3-1. I think that you've got a lot of chips that needed to fall into place before things really started firing on all cylinders for you, and I think that's happening. Unfortunately, that for Tyler, that was in a week that he kind of needs a win here to stay somewhat competitive in the Atlantic Conference. I said this last week. I don't know if he's going to be able to win the Atlantic Conference just given how tough it is this year. But any other 4, 5, and 6, doesn't matter what conference you're in. If you're 4, 5, or 6, you're making the playoffs. He had a good week, a pretty good week by Ben Roethlisberger and Christine Michael, and arguably Marvin Jones, who had 12 points. The rest of the team, not so much. Julian Edelman, Delaney Walker, Amari Cooper, and the kicker. Actually, here's an interesting stat. Julian Edelman and Delaney Walker scored as many points as the kicker, Graham Gano. Julian Edelman, Delaney got 7, as did Graham Gano. Not a great week for them. So unfortunately, 118 points. There's just no way that he would have come back and beat you by your 170 fake MVT score. So congratulations, Noel, on your first win. I'm sorry, Tyler, on this week. And let's move to the final game, Courtney versus Charlie.
All right. This one, as I said, congratulations, Charlie. Well deserved. And apart from this should have been higher scoring. What I from what I'm reading, there's something wrong with Gronkowski's hamstring is just not healing right. Sterling Shepard went up against, and I think Courtney will take a little bit of solace in this. What looks to be the NFL's best defense right now in the Minnesota Vikings, and they just shut Sterling Shepard down. So this score could have been worse. And I think the lone surprising thing about this, apart from Julio Jones just going off, is the Jets defense. Living in Seattle, I can tell you that going to this week, most of the people I listened to on the radio were kind of going, why even start Russell Wilson? The Jets are going to kill him. This isn't going to be a game. Just eat the loss and go into the bye week and have Russell Wilson get healthy. So if you would have told the average Seattle fan that the Jets defense would basically get torn apart, they would have said, you're an idiot. But that happened. And great week from Courtney, just not enough to get her over the top. But she had one of the more balanced performances I've noticed for the week. Sure, nothing like a 54-point output from Julio Jones, or what did Matt Ryan get, 53?
52.6.
With the exception of her kicker, everyone in double digits. That is fantastic. Usually fantasy-wise, that's what you want to aim for. And we thought this was going to be the week where Todd Gurley was finally going to kind of get back to form, but his offensive line just looks bad. There's also speculation that no one respects the fact that Case Keenum can throw the ball. Well, he can't. So 19 rushes for 33 yards. It's not going to really get it done, but 5 receptions for 49 yards, and they've been increasing that throughout, just trying to get the ball in Gurley's hands in better ways. So, a probably frustrating loss for Courtney, but I think this should be at least what we call a moral victory, because 142.9 will get you a win more times than not. So good job, both teams. Congratulations, Charlie, on the MVT, and good luck to both of you moving forward.
That's right. Yeah. Just one final caveat to that. Not really caveat, just an addition. Yeah, Courtney, you had a great week. 142.9, like we were saying, or even earlier in this podcast, anything above 140 is really good. That's a great score. Would have beat you are obviously Charlie, Noel, the MVT, as I'm making him, and then Vanessa at 145. The rest of the league you would have beat, and so that is always tough. It's not as heartbreaking as the EB award, which just sucks to get. That's if you haven't gotten it, pray that you don't. Because I've had it once. It's just like, seriously, you think like, what the hell did I do to, like, what karmatic this life that makes me get this kind of shit? But yeah, it sucks, and I can appreciate that for Courtney. But that is the world of fantasy, folks. That is the world of the NFL. You never know what's going to happen. The fucking Patriots scored 0 points this week, which is the first time since 1993 that they've been shut out at home. So you never know. You never know what's going to happen. Now let's move on to the previews of the week. We're going to start with the HR Buffaloes, the Human Resources Buffaloes versus me. And that is going to be an interesting game, most particularly if the trade stands, because she's giving me her tight end that she's been using, and I'm giving her a very high-powered quarterback. So we might see. That's the one position she's been a little bit deficient in, is quarterback with Trevor Siemian. Now, Dak Prescott is certainly not bad this year, but throughout the first 4 weeks is the number one quarterback. He is. Let's see what he's actually scoring here. I believe it is. Where did he go? I lost him. Oh, that's right, because he's traded to Vanessa, thanks to Ben, who's abusing Machiavelli and using his powers. Now, Matt Ryan has 37.8 points on average through the first 4 weeks, easily making him the number one quarterback. That's actually more than Cam Newton scored last year when he won MVP of the NFL for his performance as quarterback. So certainly Matt Ryan could be a factor in this. I might have sunk my own ship trading her a quarterback in the week that I play her. But say la vie, I'm in desperate need of help on my team. Back, I've got Tom Brady. I should be okay. I mean, he's back. He might need to shake some rust off. But against Cleveland, that's not a bad person to shake your rust off. Yes, Cleveland sucks or rocks or sucks. I don't remember how it goes. Just kidding. It sucks. So I don't want to call this one at this point. Both of us have people that are not playing. I have Spencer Ware as my buy, and she has nobody in a tight end, so she's traded him. So the line is way off in my favor, 20 points in my favor. But just given the way that things have been going here, just given the way that the teams have been shaking out, she's been putting up 586 points through the first part of the year. I've been putting up 508. So you do the math. She's doing, on average, outstanding 146 points per game on average through the first 4 weeks, whereas I'm a little lackluster at 127. I'm going to pick Vanessa for this one. You might say, well, Mike, you never pick yourself. And maybe that's true. I just say, oh, yeah, I'm fucking awesome. I'm going to pick myself to win. And I don't know why I'm kind of southern in that, but it's just, I don't really realistic as I can with this. I try to be as impartial as I can as commissioner so that there's no bias in the way that I administer the league. In this case, that holds true. I try to be as unbiased as possible, and I just think she's got a heck of a lot going on for her. She has DeMarco Murray, the number one running back. He's putting up 32 points a game. That's quarterback numbers. She's got Antonio Brown's going against the Jets. He's putting up 23 points a game. And Terrell Pryor, who's been a real sleeper this year, is putting up 16 points a game. I mean, he was a okay quarterback years ago who was like, okay, he's fast as hell. And the Raiders were like, well, wait a second, he's not that great of a quarterback. And the Browns took him and said, well, if he's not a great quarterback, but he's fast as hell, let's make a wide receiver. And guess what? He's really good at it. So he's scoring 16 points a game. That's a pretty good pickup for $3 in the draft. So I think Vanessa is going to take this one, especially when she loads up her roster with folks. The line's probably going to even out and maybe put in her favor. So that's the way I see it. I think Vanessa's going to take this one. And let's move on to the next one, which is Noel. Do you want to take Summer Drew Brees versus the Spartans?
You got it. All right. So we've got ourselves here another unbalanced line just because, Josh has himself two key positions on bye weeks, in Drew Brees and the Seattle Seahawks defense. Other than that, though, I mean, to look at this, surprise, surprise, I like Brandon in this game. And Kirk Cousins, as we've mentioned before, he may not be a good quarterback in real life, but fantasy-wise, he's ranked 10 this season. He'll rack up yards for you. He might throw stupid interceptions, but he'll dink and dunk his way into your fantasy heart. And thank God none of us are Skins fans. CJ Anderson, I think last week he just kind of suffered from the fact that apart from that game, how long was that game postponed for at one point? Was it 2 hours?
About 2 hours, yeah. And I have to say one caveat. Josh is a Redskins fan. He's from that part of the country, and so he is a Redskins fan, which was awesome in the early 90s, but hasn't been really that awesome since. So Josh is awesome. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the Redskins are not awesome. So if you say you like that after a game, you got to be able to back it up, which they can.
I will say this. The Skins were amazing under the great coach, Joe Gibbs, who is an extremely underrated innovator. He's the inventor of the single back offense, which most teams use now. But moving on, other than that, we keep expecting Devontae Freeman to kind of regress, but he hasn't really done it so far. Back to CJ Anderson as well. The Buccaneers seem convinced, and they're just steadfast in their desire to shut down the run, much to the chagrin of the passing game, which they got torched by Trevor Siemian and what's his face? Goatee Man.
Paxton Lynch.
Paxton Lynch, thank you. Drew a blank.
No, I think Goatee Man is his name now.
But yeah, I like Brandon this game. Oh yeah, and I was going to bring this up because you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins before. It's DeAndre Hopkins is part of the reason what makes him so great, as you said, apart from his hands, is there are a few wide receivers that are so just he talks about it himself all the time, but the player he looks for the most is Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice was not the fastest wide receiver, he's not the biggest wide receiver, but he ran just such spectacular routes and so consistently that he was able to create space because his fundamentals were so good. And if you watch Jerry Rice in his heyday, even when he got the ball, he was great running with it because he utilized angles, he had very good vision, and Hopkins has that as well. I think what we're seeing right now is probably overthinking by Osweiler, who, whenever I watch him play right now, it looks like he's throwing, to use a baseball analogy, he's throwing a fastball with every opportunity, even when he shouldn't. When he should probably take something off it and throw a changeup or throw a curveball, he's just throwing the heat, and you should not do that. You need to throw a touch. You need to make passes that make sense. The other thing I think he's doing is, New England did this a great job a couple weeks ago where they just blanketed Hopkins and kind of pushed him to one side of the field with oftentimes 2 or 3 wide receivers. And that worked. And so what they're trying to get the Texans to do is to throw it to Will Fuller, who, while he has great speed, has fairly terrible hands for NFL wide receiver. And until they can kind of get that to work, or possibly, and coaches hate doing this, but possibly move Hopkins inside or and move him around, teams are going to keep just focusing all of their coverage on Hopkins. So I don't think it's anything with what Hopkins is doing. It's a combination of what defense are doing to him, what Osweiler is not doing, and what the Texans' offense, their play calling, is also not doing. So I think Hopkins right now, while he's been disappointing, I don't think he's disappointing the same way that Beckham is disappointing, where it's more so he can't get out of his own head. Hopkins, he'll get there if the coaches give him some space. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, that being said, I still like Brandon in this game, but I do like Josh's team going forward, and we'll see what he does making some moves either in the waiver wire here or just substituting players in for the bye week.
There you go. All right, sounds good. Let's move on to Ben versus Molly, 2 3-1 teams that I think are really going to battle it out this week. I have to say this, Noel, doing this on a Tuesday versus normally when we do it on a Wednesday, we see a little bit more of the previews are a little bit more abstract because the rosters haven't been set. I think a lot of people set their rosters after the waiver has run. Oh my God, why is that so hard to say? And so they now have new players and they get everything set up. So this is kind of, Noel and I are going to be prognosticating quite a bit here. So really bear with us this week as we try to figure out what's going to happen here. But having said that, I'm going to call this one for Molly. I think she's got a little bit of a higher opportunity to win because Ben is facing a slew of tough defenses this week. One of his best performers, his best asset right now is Matthew Stafford, scoring 28.7 points per week, is going against the number 1 defense in Philadelphia. So I really going to be challenging for him to compete and put up that sort of points, I would argue, this week. And it's the similar for Ezekiel Elliott, his second best performing asset. He's going against 6th best defense. Alshon Jeffrey's going against the 4th. And Dennis Pitt is relevant given he's a tight end, but he's going against the 14th. He has yet to stack in a defense. He's lacking, unfortunately. Mark Ingram, Brandon Cooks, and the Chiefs are all on bye week for him this week. Oh, which, by the way, I forgot to mention prior to this. As I said, every week I'm going to say with the previews, I'm going to announce who the bye weeks are. And forgive me for not saying this sooner, but it is Jacksonville, Kansas City, New Orleans, and Seattle. And Noel's on bye week this week. And so because of that, Ingram with the Saints, Cooks with the Saints, the Chiefs, they're all on bye week for him. And so that's taken out some of his key players. On average, Ingram's putting up 20 points. Brandon Cooks putting up 15, which is good for a flex spot. And the Chiefs are the number 4 defense overall this year. That stings, missing them. So they put up 19 points on average per week. Because of that, I think he's going to suffer. Now, Molly has her own problems. What about Cam Newton? She doesn't have a backup quarterback. What is she going to do in his absence? If he doesn't play, she's going to have to hit the waiver wires to find somebody to take his place. She's not as stung by the bye-week tempest this week. Only Allen Hurns of Jacksonville is out, and he hasn't really been that great anyways. He's not even really starter-worthy. He's 46th overall for wide receivers, 10.8 points per week. That's barely tight end 2 consideration, let alone wide receiver. So not really an impact around the bye weeks. And she does face a lot easier defenses. They're 25th, 24th for Cam if he plays, and David Johnson, who is her really, in the absence of Cam Newton, David Johnson is her best performing asset. He's putting up 26 points per week. He's facing the 24th ranked defense. So I think that Molly has a lot more in her favor this week. The line, again, is skewed because the rosters haven't been fully set. But given all of that and the fact, I can't say she's averaging more points because if you look at the stat lines, she's not. Ben has 613 for 516, but that's because he had that first monster week. I have to say this is going to go to Molly by a hair. Ben is 3-1 with 593 points against him. That is pretty damn impressive. If you look at the overall standings, that is the fourth worst points against in the MHCL, and he's still 3-1 and leading the very tough Atlantic Conference. So Ben is whipping it out and swinging around this year, and he's definitely got a tough team to beat. Having said that, I still got to go with Mullen. So we'll see what happens, and let's move on to Noel. Let's pick apart your team this week facing Kenfield.
Oh, no. This one is another one where Kenfield has to make some adjustments. The aforementioned Jimmy Graham and Doug Baldwin are, as Mike said, are on bye week, so those guys have to get pulled out. I get to roll with Joey Falco, or Flacco, if you will, this week against the Skins, as Russell Wilson is on a bye week. I don't want to, because I think hubris can sink people, but I like what I have going this week. I would, despite the fact that old Stonehands Eric Ebron, as I was saying before, tight ends this year have been so shitty that Eric Ebron, who I don't think has gotten a double digits so far this year, actually he has, obviously, with 10.8 points per week, is is the 8th ranked tight end in fantasy football. Hopefully I can get Eifert back in there if he's not hurt anymore, excuse me. But I like what I have this week. We'll see what Kenfield does. Carson Palmer is likely out this week. He got a pretty nasty concussion, so he might be out longer, which, as I said, might not be a bad thing considering Phillip Rivers is, I think, former league member Zach had Phillip Rivers and got him for a song and was a fantastic performer because he's just consistent. He's not going to give you a ton of yards, but he'll put up 200-300 yards and maybe 2 touchdowns and an interception a week. And if you can get that going forward, you're going to be dialed in. And this, as a Green Bay fan as well, this has to be Odell Beckham Jr.'s breakout week this year because both of Green Bay's starting corners are probably out this game, and they weren't that good to begin with. So, and also, Green Bay's defense has been letting up an average of over 300 yards passing per week so far this year. So, I like my team this week, but there's some things I like about Kenfield's team. The Steelers' defense, after looking vanilla to start the year, really looked aggressive and, going up against what Mike mentioned earlier, a Fitzmagic-led team that is all about turning the ball over as of late. Who knows? So the line is skewed. I like my team, but I'm not going to be surprised if Kenfield goes to first place in the shitty Pacific Division.
All right. Yeah, he's been Fitzmagical so far this year, which is
good thing he held out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you guys should really pay me because I'm going to just be awesome for you. By that, I mean I'm going to throw a fuckload of interceptions and suck it. Hooray! So let's move on to Tyler and Vanessa. Courtney's game. I guess I am loopy. I guess I can't say I'm not loopy this week because I almost said Jake and Vanessa's game. And that's not right, but no matter how you look at it. It's Tyler versus Courtney. What the fuck? Anyways, let's move on. I think that this one's going to be very close. Both teams have been struggling hardcore this year, and both teams have a lot of things that could go right for them. The downside is they have a lot of things that could go wrong for them. Courtney, on the whole, has a very good team. If you look at her lineup, the majority of them are top 20. She has one top 10 player, which is the Cardinals defense, which is not a bad thing to have. They're averaging 18 points a week, which is still pretty good. Everyone else is top 20 except for Todd Gurley, which we were talking about, is really struggling hardcore but he's 21, so it's not like he's off. I think he's been a bust where he's putting up like 1 point a week. Expect for what his hype was, what he did last year, and for a $72 price, that he would give you more than 16 points. You'd expect 25, 30 points a game for that kind of Adrian Peterson in his prime type of performance. So we said that. I think that she's got a lot that could blow up, both in the good and the bad sense. I think that she could do very well if Todd Gurley finally clicks, if Demaryius Thomas is able to sync up and play like we expect him to play. When the Broncos had their record-setting season offensively, and get that Demaryius Thomas back, she got Jason Witten off the waiver wire. If he starts connecting a little bit more with Dak, if Kelvin Benjamin cannot suck and put up a really shitty points last week, he did manage to get 12, but that was really not that good for him, considering his overall physicality and what the Panthers could do. They just were not clicking last week on her team. However, they've been very inconsistent. The defensive schedule is not that bad. She's got a slew of shitty defenses. Kelvin Benjamin's going against the 30th best Tampa Bay defense, but Jason Witten's going against the 10th best Cincinnati defense. So it's a mixed bag for her. Now, on Tyler's side of the equation, he's got on paper a phenomenal team. Ben Roethlisberger's 5th overall, and he's going against the 29th best defense against the Jets. Jets are nothing. They're a shadow of their former defensive. Back in the day, about 6 years ago, the New Jersey Jets were the defense to have. I don't know if you remember that, Noel, but for one of 3 defenses: the New York Jets, the Minnesota Vikings, or the back when Polamalu was playing. The Jets defense now, forget about it. They are a fucking joke. They don't have, even with Revis Island, they don't have really going their way. So I think that Roethlisberger could really kick some serious ass here. And by the way, Revis Island, for if you don't know what I'm talking about, is Darrelle Revis, the really good cornerback. It is that he's got some players that are really underperforming expectations, in not just his injured players and Doug Martin and Jonathan Stewart. That goes without saying, because if you don't play, you can't put up points. But Philly's running game is really non-existent so far, because Carson Wentz has been throwing the ball very well, so he really hasn't done too much. And the other one is Julian Edelman, who has been disappointing but may not be going forward. He's the 51st ranked wide receiver in the league, which that's not even flex worthy. If you figure there are 12 starting wide receivers in the league, so everyone has to start one wide receiver. And if you wanted to put in 2 wide receiver flexes like yours truly, want to start one of the top 36 wide receivers. And at 51, he's not even in the top. You'd have to go the next rung down and then some. So he's really hasn't been that good. However, he's getting his boy Tom Brady back this week. Magical. They're not as awesome as, say, Rodgers and Jordy Nelson in Green Bay, but they are pretty special together and really cute. So I think that he could really come back here. With that, I still see this game pretty damn even. However, I'm going to call this one in favor of Courtney just because I see less going wrong with her team. Tyler's. And let's move on to the final one. It's going to be Charlie, who is the real MVP of the week, at least week 4, against Larson's Parker Rams.
So in this game, this is another one where the line just doesn't quite look right, because until they make the change, which I'm sure, unless I'm extremely mistaken, that Charlie will go back to Aaron Rodgers rather than playing Alex Smith, who's not playing this week. And Aaron Rodgers gets to go up against despite the fact that the New York Giants spent a shitload of money on free agents to shore up the worst defense in the NFL last year, most of those players are either underperforming or hurt, including their first-round pick, Eli Apple, who's a cornerback, is also he's hurt as well. So while I think the Packers might lose that game, I don't think it'll be for lack of offense. So I think that'll be a good matchup. And I look down here, and who would have thought that Isaiah Crowell is the number 2 ranked running back in fantasy football at the moment? And
seriously,
I would attribute that to just sheer desperation because of the fact that the Browns are unable to start RG3 because he is an idiot and runs into people who he shouldn't be running into. And then Josh McCown is out, so they're starting third-round pick Cody Kessler, who nearly missed the game as well. And Cody Kessler, the pick was was widely panned, I would say, throughout the league because while he did start in 2015 for USC, it was kind of thought that he didn't really have the tools to be a pro quarterback. However, I don't know how they've done it. As bad as the Browns are, they haven't really lost games due to the fact, or just due to a bad offense. Their defense has been the problem. They've managed to stay in games offensively for the most part, oddly enough, the exception being the RG3 game until he got hurt. But I would think that after losing Rex Ryan's Super Bowl, where he just wants to beat the Patriots once a year, the Patriots are going to come out pissed off, and it's rare that Bill Belichick will let you beat him with what he thinks you're going to come at him with the entire game, which is Isaiah Crowell. So while I hope I'm wrong, I would imagine that the position rank of Isaiah Crowell dropped for this week. Moving on, Julio Jones, great week, great player, but the Broncos defense is something a little different than what they've seen so far. Matt Ryan won't have the same amount of time, and they've also got much better defensive backs to kind of corral Julio Jones in the background. However, as I said before, Gronkowski has to come back at some point, and assuming that it's not just an issue with his hamstring, they're just trying to ease him back and also maybe take their time with, the wonderful Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. They figured, let's just keep Gronk out. Sterling Shepard against my Packers defense, which is depleted and not that great to begin with, could be huge. Crabtree, fantasy star to start the year. I was going to say on Tyler's behalf that I think Amari Cooper will start to do better as Crabtree draws more defenders away. The problem to start the year is that everyone's been focusing on on Cooper as opposed to Crabtree, and I think that'll start to even out in Tyler's favor. Maybe not so much in Charlie's, but I think that'll work. And you mentioned this before with the Jets defense. Their front line is amazing. They have, Sheldon Richardson, Muhammad Wilkerson, and what's his name? Leonard Williams, who they picked up last year early from USC. All great defensive linemen, and they can really be disruptive. However, Revis has been a shell of himself to start the year. He also left the game last week with an injury, and Sweetums coming back. Same thing with whoever the hell his backup is, got hurt. And those linebackers, which are protected by those great offensive linemen, are old, ineffective, or just bad. So I think that's really, really hurt the Jets defense so far, and I don't see that changing this week. And Josh Lambo has quietly become one of the better kickers for fantasy-wise. And I want to give the edge in this one to Charlie, but just looking at, as I brought up before, the matchups, I think this will be close, but I think this is Larson's to lose as Dalton's going against a very mediocre Dallas defense. I think LaShawn McCoy will have a down week because, as I said before, the Bills are celebrating their Super Bowl victory after beating the Patriots last week, so they'll be prone to getting the crap kicked out of them by the Rams. Jarvis Landry, we talked about this before, where Tennessee has managed to shut down premier wide receivers, well, one of them, in each game. I think that will go this way. I don't think Larson will miss Kobe Fleener because no one's missed him so far this year. And then we get to Theo Riddick, Charles Sims, meh. However, I do think that the Patriots defense will be pissed off that they got beat by the Buffalo Bills so badly that they will go after Cody Kessler and that Browns sort of offense. And I think they'll have a big game. And also, this could be a game where Justin Tucker, despite the fact he's already the first-ranked kicker, goes up against a bad Skins defense and does even better. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of the better players from both these teams this week is Justin Tucker.
Peculiar, but interesting. All right. Well, let's. It's kind of funny. Justin Tucker is the number one kicker overall, and he is averaging 12 points per game. That's not too shabby. That's actually pretty damn good. So, yeah, he could actually tilt the game in one of their favor. So, in Larson's favor, I should say. So that's pretty good insights there, Noel. All right, we're going to wrap up now with the huddle up like we do every week. And this week we're going to be talking about some of the vocabulary that goes on with football. And so the terms we're going to be discussing tonight involve a video actually we're going to be posting onto the main page, and then a couple other things on defense. So the first offensive words we're going to be covering are what the heck is an A and a B gap? What are those gaps? And then what do Mike and Sam have to do with football? So first of all, Noel, what is the A gap?
So the A gap is the gap between the center and the guard on either side, of the strong or the weak side. And that is, as we'll allude to here in a second, that is one of the most common places that you will see either blitzes come towards or a running back run through. And I'm going to lead you here, Mike. I'm guessing the next question is the B gap.
Actually, I was going to ask you what the difference between general and special relativity is, but let's focus on the B gap for now. What is the B gap?
The B gap is the gap between the guard or the tackle on either side of the line. And again, especially in the NFL, that is the gap that you're most likely to see blitzes come through as well as runs go through. And the reason I say this is if you watch college football, which I've just recently started watching again after years of not really caring, they run in college football, you'll see a lot more runs to the outside, so off tackle or even off tight end for that matter. And that is because in college, you'll see, especially when you see a top program play against a cupcake program, which a cupcake program, for those of you unfamiliar with the term, is a school that is monumentally better at football than the school or the football program at the school I went to in UNC at Northern Colorado. So there's more. The corner is achievable, and getting to the outside can happen. In the NFL, everyone is so athletic that you really have to run in the A gap or the B gap. And conversely, on the defensive side, while you do oftentimes hear about players coming off the corner, the most disruptive thing to a quarterback is to bring pressure from either the A or the B gap, because the quarterback fades back, and the worst thing to happen to him is to have the pocket collapse, not from the outside because he can step up, but to collapse right from the guards in the center where there's no place for him to go. And as you've seen with horrible leg injuries to Carson Palmer, to Tom Brady, when they step up and they get rolled up on by a defensive lineman, it oftentimes is bad. So quarterbacks are generally gun shy about having the pocket collapse on the inside like that.
And I would say too that you're to your point, it's a lot harder to blitz, and it's a lot harder to get to the quarterback coming from the outside. Not only do you have a physically further distance to run to get there, but it's just harder to do because typically the tackles or the linemen on the outside of the line there are better than the guards, or they're more physical or more quick, so they can actually defend it. In fact, that's why if you look at salaries, the left tackle on most offensive lines is ridiculously paid relative to the other offensive linemen, because since most quarterbacks are right-handed, the blind side or the weak side, and their throwing side is the strong side, which Noel alluded to. You need somebody really good over there to block for you. Otherwise, you're going to fall apart. When Ryan Clady got hurt here in Denver, he was our left tackle. And so with him gone, Peyton Manning was exposed to a whole lot of shit coming his way. And I also think that's what makes Miller so good. Von Miller is that he is that special talent that can rush from the outside. He doesn't need to hit the A or the B gap. As we saw in the Super Bowl, we've seen ad nauseum since. He has 10 sacks in the season so far. Or is it 11? 10 or 11, excuse me for not knowing off the top of my head, but he's doing quite well at just rushing from the outside. He's so quick. There's footage of him like taking an angle that's like 60 degrees to the ground. It's kind of physically amazing how he stays up, but he can get to you. Now, as Noel's saying, it is easier if you're a Clay Matthews to just find the hole between the center and the guard and just run through it and try to kill Cam Newton. Or Aaron Rodgers. Why would he sack his own quarterback? I am loopy. Yeah, let's just go with Newton. Try to kill Cam Newton. That's easier to do. Going from the outside is a lot harder. So, Noel, let me ask you, is it easier to rush through an A or a B gap, or is it easier to go outside? Which one would you think is the best option for a running back? Or is there a best option for the running back?
Well, I agree with you on, why tackles are paid more. However, part of the reason why it's so much more effective to rush to blitz up the middle is, and why it's so hard to block, is as a tackle, what you can do is you can utilize all that space to the outside. So if you're on the left side, you can utilize all the space to the left. If you're on the right side, you can use all the space to the right. And all you want to do is just kind of keep bumping the rusher. You don't have to knock them to the ground. You don't have to do much else apart from just push them away and kind of bide your time. It's a lack of real estate when you're in the middle. There's no place for you to go. If you try and push them out, they might actually then go at the tackle as well. And tackle ends up having to face two players and they're done. So that's why Gruden did a great job last night of discussing how Zimmer's defense does a great job of just exploiting that middle of the field, and how he'll oftentimes bring pressure in both gaps or fake pressure and do none. There's so little real estate there, and there's so little space to work in that it just confuses offensive linemen, and that's kind of why it works that way. But to your question about running the ball, you really want to run, I would say, with a guard, because a guard, for the most part, is going to be assisted by a center. The center is rarely ever going to be blocking anyone on their own, because if you look at, I'm actually looking at a chart right now, the center is the one player, apart from maybe flanked by wide receivers, but the one player on the line that is the furthest up. So there's little room for the center to really kind of drive at a blocker. So they're relying on someone else to come up and give them some help. And that really works well with interior linemen. When it comes to the perimeter, you're relying more on tight ends and space, which really isn't a big advantage, because space, you're relying on defenders to either be slow, which isn't the case in the NFL, or make bad decisions, which really shouldn't be a case in the NFL either. Or a tight end, and tight ends they just generally don't block as well as you'd like. And especially in the NFL now, you rarely have a fullback, which I'm sure we'll probably do in a huddle up later, where the fullback can also come up and help and be an additional blocker. So in where the NFL is now, as I said with Joe Gibbs and the single back, you really are just relying on those guards in the center to kind of set a point and push defenders in one way or another and open up usually either the A or B gap. And if you watch this is why I really, really hate Ben for outbidding me for Ezekiel Elliott, is he's really good at watching those backside cut lanes. So while the hole may originally be set to go in one of the A gaps, he'll sit back and he'll see that his offensive linemen have created kind of what we call a wash and push the defensive linemen plus the linebackers out of the way, and he'll see an opening on the backside B gap and just fly. Damn you, Ben.
That's right. Damn you, Ben. You can't see this, folks, because this is an audio podcast and I'm shaking my fist in the air. Damn you, Ben. All right, let's go on to the. Thank you, Noel. By the way, that was a great explanation of what the A and the B gap are. So, just to reiterate, when we bring up this huddle up topics, it's to enhance your appreciation and viewership of football, so you can see when a running back goes up the A gap, you can say, that's what they're doing. Or when you see Clay Matthews run up the A gap to sack a quarterback, you're like, so that's what Noel's talking about. Now let's talk about three names that are said a lot in football, especially by John Gruden. In fact, that's what engendered this huddle up for this week. As I was watching Monday Night Football, and I realized John Gruden talks as if you know a lot about football already, like you've already been playing football or you've played college football, so you just have a very intimate understanding. He doesn't do a good job of explaining what the hell he's talking about. So it's like, yeah, so the Mike here hit the A gap and sacked the quarterback because the fullback didn't hit his line in the flat spot pretty well, and the banana 2 jet stream 41 and the garbage up. You're like, what the John? What did you just say? So this is meant to, when you're especially watching John Gruden, decipher what he's talking about. So Noel, the name Mike, Will, and Sam, how do they pertain to football?
So on their most basic, meanings, the Sam is going to be your you're going to be your strong side linebacker. And typically what that means is the defense is anticipating that the side that the Sam is on is where the formation of the offense is putting out there is their strongest. And the easiest way to kind of put this there is that most teams, when they're on offense, are going to run to the strong side, or they anticipate a blitz coming from the strong side, so they put more blockers there. So typically your Sam linebacker is going to be someone who is a bit more beefy and is able to probably take on a blocker, maybe a tight end, maybe even a tackle, and allow the other linebackers to flow. I talked about this in an earlier podcast. The mic, which you hear all the time when Peyton Manning says all the time, Eli Manning says it, where someone's they'll point out a number and go, so and so is the mic. That is the middle linebacker, and for the most part, that means that when a quarterback yells that out, they're saying, this is how our blocking scheme, which we'll get into that later, and I'm assuming a later huddle up, that is where we want the blocking scheme to be based off of. And the mic is middle linebacker, and depending on kind of where they line up is where not only where the linemen are blocking, but where typically the offense is anticipating either pressure or the zone to be kind of favored. So if they're lined up, I actually, to be honest with you, don't really know much about this, but if they say over or under, if you see the mic on one side or on another, that means that there's something you need to key on as far as the blocking scheme as well as where to go with the ball. And then the will is the weak side linebacker. And the weak side linebacker is the one that's usually the fastest. They're the ones that are either going to be most likely blitzing or going to be just set free to try and go after the ball carrier and just run them down. And so whenever you hear in the next football game is so-and-so is the mic, that's what they mean is that's the middle linebacker, and this is who we're basing our blocking scheme on.
So recall, except for Fitzmagic, who's having a tough year, most people in the NFL did not go to Harvard. And so they really try to make the Mike, the Will, and the Sam very easy for football minds, let's call them, without being too derogatory, very easy to understand. If you think about it, Mike, middle, M, Will, weak, W, and then S, strong, Sam. That's just how that works out. So recall again that the strong side is the quarterback's throwing side typically. So for Tom Brady, anybody else, most quarterbacks are right-handed. If you're the quarterback facing the defenders, the Sam is going to be the guy on your right side if you're just facing them, and the Will is going to be on your left. And then the Mike, if 52 is the Mike, he's calling the guy, the linebacker out in the middle and saying, okay, this is for my lineman and for my fullback if he's in, or the halfback to block these guys accordingly. So that's what those names have to do with football. You hear it a lot. In fact, Noel mentioned it very well that Eli Manning, Peyton Manning used it all the time. Anytime you hear it, Brock Osweiler, because he's a disciple of Manning, does it too. They say, blah, 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 blah. Listen for that, and you'll be able to hear it. It happens every weekend. They try to call that out to help set up their own defense or offensive blocking scheme. So now you know. Now you know what an A gap is. Now you know what a B gap is. And now you know what Mike, Will, and Sam have to do with football, if you didn't already know that. So that is the conclusion of our long-winded and less loopy, though not entirely loopy-less, show for this week. Noel, is there anything you'd like to add?
Not that I can think of. I promise next week, I say this every week, will be less loopy. I promise.
We say that every week, and something happens. All right, we're going to say this. When neither of us have a job or a child to worry about, we will be not loopy. Until that point, you're going to expect a little comical whimsy and loopy from Noel and I. A, because that's our personalities and that's just kind of who we are. And B, that's just kind of what you get when you record a podcast for fantasy football on a work night. So at any rate, maybe when we're all retired, maybe when we're all when the Mile High Champions League is in its 60th year and we're all just kind of in our retirement homes or on our retirement ships or sailing around the galaxy on our retirement space vessels, we won't be loopy. But until that point, expect a little comical whimsy and some humor and some missteps here and there, because that's just the way we roll. So, Noel, I'm going to say it every time because I truly mean it. Thank you so much for helping me with the podcast this week. Thank you for all of you that are listening. We also both very much appreciate that. Next week, good luck this week.
Go Broncos.